Let's go to Lancaster University. Gary Potter, a senior lecturer in criminology there at the law school. Thank you for joining us on France 24.
Good evening.
You saw in that report that one consumer saying, hey, this is like the end of prohibition, which in the 1930s, the lifting of prohibition put a dent in organized crime in the United States. Is the comparison the right one?
I think it's a fair comparison, yes. The organised crime element of drug markets is there because the markets are illegal.
The markets are illegal. The UN for years has been advocating for the legalization of marijuana. Just how much of an impact would it make?
Well, where we've seen legalised markets introduced in Uruguay and some of the American states, we certainly haven't seen a rise in crime. We haven't seen a rise in any other problems that were predicted. So I think this could be an interesting move.
Let's talk about who's next, because here in Europe, there are countries where it's tolerated. We think of the city of Amsterdam, we think of Spain to a large degree, but not where it's legal.
It's not legal anywhere in Europe in the same way that it is now in Canada. Obviously, in Amsterdam, in the Netherlands, they've had a decriminalised and tolerated market for decades now. And again, where there is an association with crime, with organised crime, it is in the illegal supply to the coffee shops rather than the legal use and purchase from the coffee shops.
So tell us a little bit about the supply chain and the way the system works now and the way the system would work if it was legal.
Well, at the moment, all supply of cannabis is in the hands of criminals because it is entirely illegal. So either you have large-scale cultivation and importation, or increasingly across Europe, you have large-scale cultivation within the countries, but that is often in the hands of criminals who may be involved in other forms of crime, other forms of drug trafficking, other forms of violence. But it is all because they are outside the law.
After the legalization in Canada, would you say the floodgates have opened and that we'll soon see legalization across Europe?
I think that we will see people watching Canada very closely, but we've already had California and Washington and other states in the US, and we've already had Uruguay, and we've been watching some of those places for many years. I think the tide may have turned. Whether the floodgates have opened yet remains to be seen, but I think other countries will watch and wait and with a view to changing their own laws.
A view to changing their own laws, does it, what does it say about the world we live in right now? Why has there been this wave of legalization?
Well, in Canada and in many of the US states, it is following the popular support of the population. In Canada, this was an electoral promise, so it had at least tacit agreement from the electorate. So there's a reflection in changing attitudes. Uruguay was slightly different. There, the government introduced legal markets despite opposition from the population, but that was with a view to breaking the link with organised crime.
When it comes to cigarettes, when it comes to alcohol, it's big business in terms of taxes for the governments. How much of a windfall could they expect from marijuana in Europe?
I think we would be talking, across Europe, we'd be talking billions of euros.
Billions of euros. So why isn't there more of a push than even today? When you, as you say, there hasn't been an increase in criminalization in places where it's been legalized.
So there's been obviously a preconceived idea, if you like, that legalising any drug would lead to certain increased social problems like crime, but we are seeing more and more states, more and more jurisdictions experimenting with different forms of liberalisation, and other countries are seeing that the predicted social harms are not materialising. So hopefully that may continue and other countries will follow suit.
Gary Potter, one last question. In that report, we saw that health officials say that perhaps the health risks haven't been properly explained, so he's a little bit wary on that score. Marijuana, do you put it on the same plane as alcohol?
No, but of course it depends a bit on mode of consumption. Many people still smoke marijuana or cannabis, and smoking, of course, does have health problems, as we see with tobacco. But under a legal market, we have the opportunity to maybe push people towards safer forms of consumption, to not mixing with tobacco, to using forms of ingestion other than smoking. We also have the situation where once legal, people who do have health problems will be more likely to seek help because they are not facing the risk of criminalisation or of stigma for admitting to an illegal activity.
Gary Potter teaches criminology at Lancaster University. Thank you for speaking with us.